Hey guys, how you doing? We're back at it, and it's a couple days since I filmed the last clip. I figured rather than, keep taking stuff apart, I'd figure out what parts I need and go ahead and place the order, so that way I'll be ready when, when it's time to put stuff back in. And it amazes me because I ordered everything literally a day and a half ago, and the parts are already here. So the first thing I got was this AC Delco 36370. I did order new return hoses for the power steering, and I went with Gates because I'd swear I've heard of them before, but for whatever reason this came with the exact same number, but it's AC Delco. The order right here is that should be a Gates number, so it is what it is. What are you going to do? I also got some clamps, and I got some by this company called Roadformer, but I'm also going to see if they have clamps. I want to try one other company as well just to compare. And the one thing I noticed about the clamps that hopefully I ordered, the right ones, was the clamps that were in the truck originally did not have stainless threads on the screws that tighten them down. So I tried to find ones with stainless threads so they don't get rusted up and sticky like the last one did. I got a couple gaskets for the block heater there. So if that top one comes off, I can put them back. And then I got a couple different sizes. I want to replace the grommet on the intake as well. So I got a couple different sizes of these things. If anybody knows how to find more of an OEM style to the grid heater, the air intake on the Cummins, let me know. This was as good as I could do. I don't know. So today what I'm hoping to do is just keep moving forward and pray that my camera works. I keep getting an error message on this guy. Not really sure what's going on with that. So let's keep moving forward. When I initially looked at doing this job, I couldn't figure out how I was going to get to that bolt in the back there. I really hope that's coming in okay. So I ordered some Sunex half moon wrenches, and I guess I just want to let you guys know that if you order Sunex half moon wrenches, I'll show you in a second, you can get to that, there goes the light. You can get to that bolt, and I'm moving it, I'm only moving it a little bit at a time. But it's a Sunex. There's a set, I'll put it below. But the actual wrench is 99350-3M. I'm going to start taking stuff apart, and let me get the flashlight. Maybe we'll look one more time just to give you guys and myself what things look like now, and then I'll start popping stuff off. But there's no way to get you guys a good view of that. So we're going to take off the line from the vacuum pump here. There's a bolt. This whole mess of wires has a small bolt right there to take off, which then has a stud that goes to hold the vacuum pump and power steering assembly on. Down below here, there's a wire loom on the bottom of the pump, and then there is a stud for the pump, but what I think I'm going to end up doing is just leaving the pump attached to the vacuum pump and take that out as an assembly. And then on the back of the power steering pump, you've got two non-threaded low pressure lines and one threaded pressure line. We'll take off the low pressure lines first and then see what happens. I have heard some people say they wait to take the high pressure line off until after they loosen the pump because it's tough to get in there. We'll see what happens on that one. That is tricky. And then I don't have the view from underneath for you guys, but there is a bracket underneath I need to take off that attaches to the block that kind of helps to brace the power steering pump. And there is the supply line as well to the vacuum pump. There's one oil supply line. So once I get all that stuff off and out of the way, then I should be able to undo the 2 bolts on the front of the vacuum pump, which hopefully I can get one from. This one is the one I'll do last. On top, take the one on the bottom off first, if I can find a way to get to it from the bottom, and then take this one off, and the whole assembly should come out. Make sure you've got a drip pan underneath, and let's get started. Okay guys, well, let's get started getting this power steering pump out of there. And one thing I'm gonna do, maybe a little bit different than other videos, is, I'm gonna leave a few of the flubs in there, just because I guess maybe to reassure you and maybe to reassure myself that we all make mistakes. So as you watch me struggle to get this hose clamp off, when this happens to you, just remember that when you're watching someone else's YouTube video, it's very easy to edit this stuff out. But in real life, it takes more than one try to find the right size socket, and it'll take more than one try to get a stupid hose clamp off. I think I'm getting pretty close here. I really can feel it's about to give way. There we go. So the heat of the motor ends up basically super gluing these low pressure power steering fluid lines to the fittings there. So every video I watched when I was researching this said you're gonna have to cut those lines off, and there's no way that those lines were gonna move. So we did end up getting the razor blade out, and just be careful with that razor blade, because those lines are also hardened from being near the engine all those years and the heat. And I know at least one time I kind of slipped and almost cut myself with that razor blade. So take your time, several light cuts, and just make sure if the blade slips, you're not going to catch yourself. I almost cut my hands open in 3, 2, 1. That's why you keep your hands out of the way. Notice how I'm using 2 hands on the utility knife now and cutting very carefully. The method that seemed to work best for getting these lines off is to, score them and cut them as deep as you can. And then don't grab them over the metal. Grab them outside the metal of the fitting and just twist them, and eventually they'll come loose for you. I'm using some Gearwrench extended length hose clamp pliers. I got a set of like 3 sizes, and I'll tell you, since I got that set, I really can't figure out why I struggled with removing hoses from fittings all my life, especially when you're like tuning up lawnmowers and you try to pull off those little fuel filters. Those hose clamp pliers really do a nice job. I haven't mentioned yet, but all the work I'm doing here is I'm reaching into the bay fairly deeply. I mean, I think you've seen enough videos showing how far in I am, but I'm also standing on a stepladder on the second step. So you're climbing up so you can reach down to reach into that engine bay. So like I said, it takes a few tries to get the right size screwdriver, or in this case I think I tried 2 different screwdrivers. I tried a nut driver, but it's just a pain to reach in there. It's not really like difficult. It just takes time to find the right size tool and then to find the right angle, and then stretch every once in a while after you get tired of reaching down for a while. Got it. Let's see if I do any better with the utility knife this time. Looks better, just taking, light strokes, controlling my actions, and making sure if I slip, no parts of my body are in the way. These hose pliers, man, they're just really awesome. I didn't get a pair of short ones. All I have is the super long ones. I figure I can always use the super long ones when they're, too short, but I can't use the short ones to get something long. And they made taking that hose off a lot nicer of a job. So this one's kind of funny too. I struggle longer than most would, I think. My pliers kept slipping off of that fitting. Here I am. I switched to the needle nose pliers. That yellow thing is from a Lyle fluid stopper kit. Got it online. Wasn't from Amazon, but it's a handy little kit, and I'm sure guys that turn wrenches all the time have plenty of spare parts from when they order hoses to plug holes. I didn't or don't, so I got the Lyle fluid stopper kit. So one of the toughest parts of this whole job for me was actually getting this high pressure line off. And I think I mentioned earlier that, what some guys will do is, pull the whole power steering pump, bring the power steering pump up higher in the engine bay, and then they can get the wrench on it, then to loosen it up. And eventually that's what I ended up doing. But the solution is to basically just get some flare nut crow's foot wrenches, which I'll show you later. And if I had the flare nut crow's foot wrenches, once I actually got the right size, I would have had that off in a minute or two tops. So if you're doing this job and you want to save yourself some struggle, look in the description of one of the videos. I don't really talk about the crow's foot flare nut wrenches until later in the series, but that's the secret to getting that high pressure line off. I think what happened with that little nut that holds all those wires on is I broke it free initially, but then I was having a hard time getting my socket back on it. So eventually I know I used a deep well socket to loosen it up, and it looks like I'm going to get it here, but I must not, because I don't think I get it off. But like I said, everything in here, it's not right in front of you. You're doing a lot of this by feel. What I found myself doing was looking at something, I'd even use the mirror sometimes to get a look at something, and then just kind of go by my memory of what I saw to figure out where I should get my fingers and try to get the right position to get this stuff off. Another thing I ended up learning during this job, was why mechanics have so many different sized ratchets. I just bought some Gearwrench extended ratchets with a really nice comfort grip, and I was like, this is awesome, man. These are the ratchets I want to use because they're so comfortable and they're long and give you good leverage. But on this job, there was a few different times where I went back to my, my Craftsman set from the late 80s because I needed something, shorter and also without the flex to it, just to get access. It was easier to use. So I guess the moral of the story there was you can never have enough ratchets, and never get rid of a ratchet because you never know when you'll need it again. There we go. Yet again proving that sometimes persistence is better than skill. Those Astro, it's an LED rechargeable light. It's got a swivel head on it, and it's also got a magnet. And I got the idea for those from Eric O at South Main Auto, and I really like them. I can run them on full for a long time. I'm going to guess about 3 hours. I pretty much use them on full because why would you want anything less than full power? And after I bought one light, maybe a month later or so, I decided to pick a second one up because you can just never have too much light when you're working on a job, or if it's something you don't need a ton of light. Sometimes you just want, when the battery dies, you want to have one cooking on the shelf ready to go. So here I am trying to get that other wire loom off, and I'm using, this is called the Gearwrench XL. I did a video on these a few years ago, and these are some of my favorite wrenches because they're really long, so you can get into spots like this. They give you good leverage, and if you're not using the side with the ratcheting head, the fixed head side is really good for breaking stuff loose. The one thing I'll say about these wrenches, which I've been learning, is because they're a spline drive, they will chew bolts on occasion. And, I'm not saying don't buy them because of that. It's very hard to find such a specialty wrench like that without spline drive. But you just got to be careful because on softer bolts, they will chew into them a little bit. So what I'm doing here is I've got that Craftsman wrench to hold the stud, and then I'm using the gear wrench to loosen it because it's actually a lock nut holding that wire loom in. So without the wrench to hold the stud would basically spin all the way out, and then you'd be kind of stuck. Or I guess you could just spin it back in the bay. So that was a little bit frustrating, yet again, because I'm trying to loosen, a 1/16 of a turn at a time. And eventually what I end up doing is getting some ratcheting wrenches that are smaller to save some effort. But by the time I did that, I probably would have, if I just kept going with the double XL wrenches, I probably would have taken just as long by the time I walked to get another wrench. I seriously debated using just a regular nut with like a lock washer when I put this nut back on the stud. I decided not to. I don't want to improve things and end up causing trouble down the road. But it just probably took me 8 to 10 minutes of frustration to get this one freak off. But eventually we got it. So all's well that ends well. I tried to put the low pressure lines, in the best way possible so the fluid could drain out of them. So there goes the other wire loom. So I got both the wire looms off. I got both the low pressure lines off. We have the fluid drained from the power steering pump. Vacuum pump is disconnected. And this is where I stopped because I was still kind of unsure how getting the vacuum pump and power steering pump off the timing cover was going to go. I'll admit I was a little bit nervous. So I figure I'd call it quits today and hit it another day when I'm fresh and maybe watch a few more YouTube videos.